Hi everyone, I'm Jacqueline from Pudgy Cat Games, and today we're going to be looking at the solo mode for The Clock Strikes Midnight. The Clock Strikes Midnight is a game that I've invented that is for 1 to 2 players, ages 12 and up, and plays in about 15 minutes or so. Solo mode and 2-player mode do have some variants, so we will be making a different video for 2-player mode, but let's get started. So a quick overview of everything that's on our table here. These on the outside are called hour cards. These are action cards. This is the round tracker, the rulebook, some reminders for solo mode. I will probably not be using these too much because I know what they are, but if you were playing, these are included in the game. Typically, you will use a coin as a rotation option, so you'll flip it to see whether you're able to rotate things clockwise or counterclockwise. However, I can't get that to work correctly in Tabletop Simulator, so for today, we're going to use this white dice in place of the coin. If it lands on an odd number, you're going to rotate clockwise, even number will be counterclockwise. And this blue dice over here is what's known as your stepmother die. So, before I explain what any of that is, let me explain to you the objective. So in The Clock Strikes Midnight, you take on the role of Cinderella, and you are trying to go to the ball and fall in love with the prince. Your magical stepmother, with the aid of modern technology, has provided you a watch, so that way you can get home before all the magic wears off and your carriage turns back into a pumpkin. However, your watch that she gave you is broken. As you'll notice, all of the numbers are in the wrong places. So your goal is to fix your watch before the clock strikes midnight, or essentially before the 24th turn. In order to do that, what you'll need to do is get all of your numbers. Cinderella is the light blue coloring. If you look on our cards, you will see that they have patterns. So for colorblind players that may have trouble differentiating between the light blue, the medium blue, and the dark blue, they each have a unique pattern as well. But Cinderella is going to be this light blue color that's on the 2 on the bottom left-hand side. So you want to get all of those numbers into the correct place on the clock and into what's called the on-top space of the card itself. So a card is considered in place if it was in the correct location on the clock. So say this 2 o'clock, one is right here. And it is actually, let me just adjust our rotation here. So it's considered in place when it is on the top of the card in the correct location on the clock. If this 2 was, say, turned down here, it would be in the correct location on the clock, but it's not considered locked in place as it is not in the correct place on the clock. So this would not be able to help you win the game. Once you get all numbers, 12 all the way back to 12, in the correct place, in their correct spot on their card, you win the game. So how do we do that? Basically, every turn, you are going to be taking one of the 4 available actions. You will always have the option to rotate a card in the game. No matter which game you're playing, this will always be one of the choices. It will always be in the top left-hand space, and it will always be an option. The other 3 cards that are down here will be, there's double-sided, and you will have 3 random ones assigned for each game. So right now we have 2 opposite cards. Opposite means that they are directly across from each other on the clock, so in a 12 o'clock or 6 o'clock spot, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock, etc. We have 2 adjacent cards, meaning 2 cards that are right next to each other, so like these 2 right here, and 2 cards with matching symbols. If you look in the middle, you have some magical items. You have your glass slipper, or if you're looking at the original version of Cinderella, your golden slipper, note the color, the pumpkin, and your ball gown. So matching symbols, it doesn't matter what number, what color, it just matters that they are the same symbol. So if I wanted to swap this one right here with this one over here, you could do that. When you swap a card, the number that is on top should always remain on top after something is swapped. So like this 3 would stay on the top over here. My card rotated a little as I picked it up, but the 1 would stay on top. The rotator card, you would be able to rotate it whatever direction this coin flipped, or in this case, whatever direction our die is indicating. So in this turn, if we had rolled a 1, you could only rotate a card clockwise. If it was an even number, you could rotate it counterclockwise. So you're going to use those different actions in order to get your clock into the correct place. Every time your turn is over, you will advance this tracker 1 space, and you're going to try to see how well you do. At the end of the game, if you complete it before 24 turns is up, you will have successfully completed the game, and you will have considered to be have won. However, we have a really cool little feature in our rulebook which I'm going to try to flip open for you so that way you can see how well you did. So you're trying to do this in as few turns as possible, and we have a nice little ranking system that I'll pull out over here for you. So if you complete it in 24 turns, unfortunately, you did not win the game, and you are a sad, lonely spinster. If you complete it in 22 or 23 turns, you were previously a peasant, but guess what? You're not a peasant anymore. In 19 to 21 turns, you are the newest noble. 16 to 18 turns, you are a promising princess. 13 to 15 turns, you are the belle of the ball. Or 12 or less turns, you are now a quintessential queen. So you want to try to see how well you can do. I promise you it is very challenging to get to the quintessential queen level. In all of my testing, I have yet to be able to achieve it, but I'm confident that somebody out there can do that. So take on the challenge. I would love to see if you win. The other cards that you could see on the back of these, we have swap 2 cards with even numbers on top. So meaning like this on top position, so this 2 o'clock and this 10 o'clock, they would be even. So you could swap them if you wanted to. Swap 2 cards with an odd number on top. So you could swap like this 3 and this 7. And swap 2 cards with matching colors on top. So this could be like 2 dark blues or a light blue with a different light blue, a medium blue with a medium blue. So those would be your different choices. And now, your goal to get to the ball is not just going to be a time crunch. You also have your evil stepmother who's going to be hindering you along the way. As I mentioned, this dice here is our stepmother die. Every turn, you are going to roll this dice, and depending on what it lands on, the stepmother is going to try to block one of the actions to try to deter you from getting to the ball so her daughters can meet the prince and marry him instead. If you land on a 1, it's going to block this space right here. This is considered the 1 space. This is the 2 space, 3, 4. So any of those numbers, it would block that card, meaning you cannot take that action this turn. A 5, nothing happens. You can take any action you would like. And if you roll a 6, your fairy godmother comes down and intervenes and allows you to actually take 2 actions in 1 turn, which is super helpful because it stops the round from advancing multiple times. The last thing that you need to know about are these little cubes down here. These are your wishes from your fairy godmother. There may be times in the game where you do not wish to take one of the available actions. Maybe the stepmother really blocked the action that you want to take. Typically in the clock strikes midnight, you have to take an action. It is not optional, it is required. But you could choose to use one of your wishes and choose to not take an action that turn instead. In which case, time is still going to pass, so it would move on to the next hour. However, you did not have to take an action. This can be really helpful as sometimes taking an action could actually hinder you farther than if you didn't have to take it in the first place. You have 3 wishes. Once you use all 3 of them, unfortunately at that point, you have no other choice but to take an action. You only get 3 wishes from your godmother. You can't wish for more wishes. However, if you were playing this and you were looking for an easier mode, you could play the mode, the easy one. It's actually called a wish for more wishes, in which case you could choose to have an unlimited number of wishes and you would kind of just ignore these cubes. Time would still pass every round. However, you could take as many wishes as you would like. And for a more advanced mode, you could choose to use no wishes at all and play where you have to take a turn every round, whether you want to or not. And that's really everything you need to know to get started. So we're just going to mix these up really quickly, and I'm going to just kind of rotate some things around here, see where they land. I already kind of shuffled everything before, but let me just show you really quickly. If you deal out the cards and you have a number that's awkwardly kind of like this, where there's not one on top, just rotate it clockwise so that way a number actually lands in the on top position, and whatever number that is will now be the new number on top here. So we are all set up and ready to go, and let's start, and I'll teach you how to play. So we're going to start by rolling our 2 die here. So our fairy godmother actually came and granted us a wish on this specific turn, which is awesome. And as you can see, we have a 1, so we can rotate something clockwise. So you can take 2 actions this round. They can be the same action or they can be different. That is entirely up to you. So what I'm going to start doing here is looking to see which numbers are kind of already near where I want them to be. So maybe I can get things in place sooner rather than later. So right now, this 3 is exactly where I'd like it to be. So I'm going to rotate this 3 clockwise to get it into place. There's something that's really cool about the rotate action that I will show you in a little while once we get some things lined up. Right now, all you need to know is you're taking this rotate action and there are no other dresses on either side. So only that 1 card is going to rotate. Later in the game, when we have ones that are adjacent to a different card that we would like to rotate, actually, I can demonstrate for you right over here. So one of the special options is when you have cards that are adjacent to a card with a matching symbol, meaning they're next to the same symbol card, these make what are known as a connected gear. If you look on each of the cards, there's 3 gears essentially that kind of go off. When you rotate a gear in real life, gears that are next to it rotate as well. So cards that have the same symbol are considered connected chains, meaning that if you rotate one of them, you're going to need to rotate the adjacent matching symbol cards as well. However, just like in real life, when you rotate one gear clockwise, the other gear is going to rotate counterclockwise, and so on and so forth, back and forth down the line. You can actually use this to kind of hook up some really cool combinations here. For example, if I rotated this 9 clockwise, then there are actually 2 dress symbols right next to it, in which case those 2, because they are adjacent to the card that rotated clockwise, would rotate counterclockwise. So in this case, I got my 9 into the correct position on the card, but I've moved my 11 out of place. This is not an optional action. Unless a card is considered locked in place, which we talked about before, means it's in the correct place on the clock as well as in the top position on the card, that card will rotate whether you want it to or not. So in this case, we could do this, but we just moved our 11 out of place. So that's not particularly helpful. However, sometimes you can do this to rotate multiple cards into place in one turn, which is really awesome. If the 11 had already been in place and we went to rotate something, so say for example, these ones were here, we'll just put this back, and they were like this, and we decided we wanted to rotate this 9 to get it into place, the next card in the sequence would be the 11, which would be considered locked in place. It's in the 12 o'clock position on the card, as well as in the 11 o'clock position on the clock. Our rotation would stop with that card. If there had been a dress here, that card could still rotate, pending that it was not locked in place. However, this card and the following card would not rotate because this gear is essentially now stuck where you want it to be. So let me just move everything back here. So I'm going to put everything back to how it was. The 6 was on the top and the 8 was over here. So that's how the connected gears work. However, this dress over here is its own dress. There's no dress on either side of it. So we're going to take that as our action. And we're going to rotate this 3 so it is now in place. Once an item is in place, you can still move it around the board. Sometimes that's helpful for like 3-way swaps or rotations or things like that. The only time it really makes a difference is when you're rotating the gear. That card would not rotate, so you don't have to mess the board up further. So that's going to be our first action. In our second action, we are going to rotate this 9 and, or we're going to swap this 9 and 11 with our adjacent swapping action, or it could be the matching symbol. They are both. So our 11 is now in place as well. So in this one turn, we were able to get 2 numbers exactly where we wanted them to be, which is really good. So now time is going to pass, and we're going to pick these up and roll them again. All right, so this time we can no longer swap matching symbols, but we could rotate something in the counterclockwise direction if we wanted to. We also have our swap to opposite action and our adjacent card action. So what we're looking at right here, this 12 could be a potentially good swap because it would get it into the right spot because it's adjacent. It wouldn't be at the top of the card, but it would at least be in the location that we would like. We could also move the 9 to get it in place. We could swap a 6 and a 1, which could be a good choice. We're going to maybe consider doing that because that would get our 6 where we like it. So we're going to do that. So even though these have matching, actually, we can't do that action because they are not adjacent and we do not have a, they're not opposite each other as well. And our swapping symbol is blocked currently this turn. So our stepmother is getting in the way of our plans. So what we're going to maybe consider doing instead is swapping these as they are adjacent so we can get our 9 into a position that we like a little bit more. Time is going to pass. And then we're going to roll these. And we're just going to fix this one so that way it's in. Oh, okay. We're going to re-roll those because I have no idea what they were originally. Okay, so a 2 and a 2. So, move this here, move that there. So just as a reminder, this is always card 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this time we can't do opposite, but we can do matching symbols. So now we're going to take that action that we were hoping to do before and move that where we'd like it. Again, time is going to pass. We're going to roll. So our stepmother is blocking our matching symbols. And again, we can rotate something counterclockwise. So counterclockwise doesn't really help us here, but let's see what else we have. Adjacent wise, this is a 4. That would be a good matching symbol one potentially. And that would also be nice because eventually we could make that an opposite switch. Or we could kind of do that right now. So we're going to do the opposite. And nope, we're not. We're going to do adjacent first. So we're going to do this, and we're going to try to set something up for a couple turns down the road. So now our 12 is kind of where we'd like it to be. And we're going to roll. All right, so in this case, the stepmother is blocking our rotate action, so we can't take a rotate action even if we wanted to. But now we are going to take the swap to opposites, which I know seems a little crazy because it's not really getting anything into the space that we want it to be in, but that's okay because you're going to see what's going to happen in a turn or two. We're going to roll again. A couple tips. I don't encourage you to save the rotate action for the end and wait to rotate all your cards then, because then you're going to wind up with this happening where once again our rotate action is blocked and you have some wishing cubes, but wait too long and unfortunately you're going to spend a lot of wishing cubes just waiting to rotate things. However, we can't take a rotate action this turn, but what we can do is take this action to swap 2 cards with matching symbols. So we're going to do that. And now our 1 and our 4 are in the right place, and our 8's not too far away either. So that's where like the kind of little triangle 3-way action comes in. It can be really useful for moving things around. All right, so we have 2 and a clockwise. So we are counterclockwise. So let's look at our board and see if we can get anything into place rotating it counterclockwise. So right now we're looking at this 4 and you might be going, I really wish I could rotate things clockwise. But keep in mind, remember we talked about the connected gear action. So we have another shoe right here, meaning that if we rotate this 10 counterclockwise, this 4 will actually rotate clockwise and get into the correct position. And as you would notice, there is another shoe connected on this side of the 10 as well. However, this 6 is locked in place, meaning it's in the 6 o'clock spot, in the 12 o'clock spot on the card. So it would not rotate, so we do not need to mess that gear up. So in this case, we were able to get 2 of our light blue numbers onto the top in one action, which is really cool. All right, moving onward. Let's see what happens. All right, so our 1 is blocked again. So again, no more rotating. But we can swap things around here. So let's see. Right now, our 1's in a good spot, our 12's in a good spot, 2's in a good spot. They just need to do some rotating here. Our 8, and however, is not in the right spot, and neither is our 5. So let's swap these 2 to try to get them to be closer to where I would like them to be. And time is going to pass. So as you can see, time starts to pass kind of quickly as you're going along here. So we're blocking the swap action, but we can rotate something counterclockwise if we wish to, which again, we don't particularly have anything that's super, oh wait, we could rotate the 12. So let's do that. So our 12 is now locked in place over there. And we're going to roll. All right. Our fairy godmother has come down to help us out. We can take 2 actions of our choice, including rotating something counterclockwise if we wish to. So what I'm looking at right now is we have this 7 and this 5, which are not exactly where we want them to be. However, if I swap these 2, I can get the 7 in place. So that's probably a good choice for us. But before I do that, I'm going to look and see if there's any actions I can take where rotating something, like 1 something, might be able to rotate other things into place. It does not look like that is the case. So we are going to try to figure out the best option here. Because right now, we want to get this 10 over here. And there's not a particularly great way to do that. Opposite would have to involve moving this 11 out of place, which could actually be a choice right now. We could do this. Before we do that, actually, let's save that for the next turn here. Back over here. So we're going to start by swapping these 2 pumpkins. And you'll see why in just a second. So now Our 7 is where we want it to be. Our 5 is still not. And then our 10 is still not. These are really the only two numbers we still need to move into the correct place. So we're going to start by swapping these two. And I know you might be going, but Jacqueline, why did you move that 11 out of place? Well, if you look here, the easiest way to get this 10 over to here involves somehow getting this 10 across the board. Otherwise, you're going to need to swap a lot of things out of the way in order to kind of move it to where you want it to be. So we're going to hope that we can eventually swap across and then adjacent again in order to get things where we'd like them to be. So we got to do our 2 actions, but only have to move that 1 hour. All right, so we cannot move opposite cards this turn, which is fine. So what we're going to focus on now is we have a lot of cards that need to get rotated into place. So let's see which ones we might be able to rotate, where we could maybe rotate more than 1 card at a time. It looks like only these 2. And we're going to do that because right now everything else needs to be rotated clockwise. So by doing this, we're going to rotate this one right here counterclockwise, which seems a little silly because now it's going to be kind of just equally out of place as it was before. But this one will rotate clockwise. And what's good about this is we now have a card that can actually rotate counterclockwise into its space. Everything else is kind of right now waiting on being rotated clockwise besides maybe this 2. So actually, it looks like we have a couple that could have been counterclockwise. That might not have been our best move, but that's okay. We took that action, so we committed to it, and it is done. But we'll continue onward and see what happens. All right, so this time, nothing happens. Our fairy godmother did not visit, but the stepmother is also not blocking anything. And we can take a rotate clockwise action. So we are going to take that action. We are going to rotate this 1 into the correct place. We're going to move forward our time again. And we're going to rotate. All right, we're blocking matching symbols. But at this point, I think it might behoove us to actually consider swapping these cards so that way we can get them closer to where they need to be. All right, time is going to pass. We're rotating. All right, so we can no longer swap opposite, but we can rotate things counterclockwise. So we have 2 choices here. We could swap adjacent cards and get our 10 and 11 back into the right place. Or we could rotate something. But if you look on the board, we have several cards right now that need to be rotated, and they all need to be rotated counterclockwise. So if we swapped it, that would basically mean all our future actions have to be a rotate, which means if the rotate gets blocked, we could be in trouble. So we're going to take that rotate action right now to try to start getting more items in place and save our swap action for a little bit down the road. So we're going to put that 2 where it should be. And then we're going to roll again. So like I said, the stepmother is now blocking the exact action that we want here. So in this case, we're going to do our swap action because that kind of is the best action we have available to us right now. And again, we're going to do this. Roll. And again, the stepmother is blocking the action that we want. So now, like I said before, we do have to take an action this turn, normally. But we have wishes left, so we haven't used all our wishes yet. So the only things we really want to do right now involve rotation, which is blocked. So we're going to use a wish to not take an action. Time is still going to pass, and then we're going to roll again. But we didn't have to move anything out of place that we didn't want to. And once again, we are unlucky here. We've gotten this action blocked several times in a row. So again, we're going to do that. Now we're going to shake them up real good. We're going to hope for something better. All right, so nothing is being blocked this time. However, it is also only a rotate clockwise option, which doesn't help us get any of these 3 into a particularly good spot. However, like I said before, sometimes rotating things clockwise would still be useful because now in the future, if we have a rotate clockwise, we can still take this action. But time is passing and we are running out of time here. So let's see if we can get this. All right, we have a rotate counterclockwise. So we're going to rotate our 9 into the correct spot. Ignore the dice. I forgot to deselect them. Time is going to pass again. We're going to roll one more time. All right, so this one would be 5. Nothing is being blocked again. But as you can see, again, it's rotate clockwise. So this 7 that we put in place before, we can now rotate clockwise to actually do something this turn. And now we're left with only needing to get our 5 into place. So we have a couple turns left. I feel like we should be able to do this, but let's see. Sometimes the stepmother comes in and gets really in the way. All right, so we have a rotate clockwise. So in this case, we're not going to waste our wish. We are just going to rotate this one clockwise, even though it doesn't really help us, but I'd rather save that wish just in case that action that we really want gets blocked on a future turn. So let's see, can we get a rotate clockwise? We got a rotate clockwise and it is not blocked, so we are going to rotate clockwise. We're going to move this over to this one, and we have successfully beaten the game. However, as you can see, based on our little ranking scale, we got a 22. So we're only in the pretty low tier right now of previously a peasant. So there's a lot of room for improvement and to try to do better next time. And that is how you play the Clock Strikes Midnight solo mode. You're trying to compete to see how well you can do each round and try to beat your own score. Something that I didn't mention that might be helpful to note as well. If you look on the cards, there is a small numbered gear on the bottom. Those gears are only to identify which card is which in the deck. If you wanted to verse somebody, you could actually lay out 2 decks, following kind of putting the same number card in the right position on each one, and set up the clock so you set them up the same and see who can solve it the quickest between you two as well. We'll also be doing some challenges with this as well, where we'll kind of lay out a grid and set your cards up like this and who can solve it quicker. But these little tiny gold gears aren't for anything other than just identifying which card is which. You'll notice that these cards have them as well. And that's really everything, but I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And if you are interested in learning more about the games that we design or the games that we review, because we do a lot of reviews as well, check out pudgycatgames.com and follow us on Instagram at pudgycatgames or on Facebook at pudgycatgames as well. Thanks for joining, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.